Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jacob Licklider here. It is now the 15th of May, 2017, and I just finished watching the first part of the Aztecs, the Temple of Evil. This episode it is, well, I hate to say it, but it's probably going to be a bit of a weak one, because it does what it needs to do. It sets up, it has a lot to set up, but the Aztecs, it's a four-part story written by John Lucarati, and part one seems to be let's get everything set up so we can get the plot lines going, and we can have the rest of the episodes to conclude them. It's pretty good at getting us the exposition we need to explain that we're at the time of the Aztecs. Barbara specializes in teaching Aztec history. It's an area that she likes. She's mistaken for a god, with the Doctor, Ian, and Susan being her handmaidens. Ian starts a rivalry with one of the other Aztecs called Ixta, who is determined to kill him. Susan gets sent off to learn about Aztec culture because obviously Caroline Fort's vacation is coming up in the next two episodes, which actually is probably for the best, because Caroline Fort as Susan has really started to be great on me. She grates on you in this one just a little bit as she makes these weird remarks. Oh, look, cartoons! Ha ha ha! Look how funny we are. It's not very funny. It's kind of dull. She doesn't really do much, so it's nice just to ship her off so we can really focus on Barbara. Whereas the last story was sort of a let's showcase everybody, this story is meant to be Barbara's time to shine, I think. Just with her being this goddess, and just her sort of being regarded in this high limelight, which is really good for the character, I think, overall. There are some problems that I have with this one. First off, the entire again, you have Susan, who really doesn't do anything. John Ringham, who plays the High Priest Teltoxel, he's really good. I really like him. It's not really a problem. But he's going a bit over the top and be like, look at me, I'm the obvious villain. You're supposed to hate me, which is kind of interesting. But the story is taking a generally interesting approach when it comes to dealing with human sacrifice. I mean, it's ready to show sacrifice before, of course, Susan interjects. And I know they wouldn't show it because this is kids' TV, so they can't really show too much. But it's still interesting to see that they were gonna go there. At least in some part, they were gonna go there and gonna do it like this. But well, there isn't too much really to talk about, except other than the fact that I think some of the backgrounds for the exterior shots are kind of lackluster, because you can see a lot of the wrinkles. I don't know if that's because of the high quality screen or just because it's not a very good set. And the direction, it just seems to be like, right, end shot there, we're done, we're going on. Like, there's a point where Ian says a lot. The Doctor says his famous, you can't rewrite history not one line, which that's where that line is from, which is, really, it's a really good line, and it sort of is establishing the idea of time travel. This one, it seems to be the story that's going to be a Barbara story, and one that's going to really establish what in history they can really change, that'll be interesting to see develop overall. But it's this, you can't rewrite history, not one line, and then you have Barbara give her response. We cut to her, she waits just a second, and then she goes on. They're just little mistakes like that sort of bring my enjoyment of the episode down just a bit. But other than that, yeah, it's still a pretty enjoyable episode overall. It's not quite great, but it does what it needs to do to get set up. So I'm going to give the Temple of Evil a 7 out of 10. Alright, it is now the 16th. It's the 16th of May, 2017. And I just finished watching The Warriors of Death, which is the second episode of the Aztecs. This episode already improves a lot on the first by giving us a really tightly knit story about where really you see all these plotlines that were set up by the first episode pretty decently do a really good job of intertwining together and to sort of just make a pretty overall good, fun episode with a lot of drama. You have this Tlatoxel believing Barbara's not really this goddess, which she isn't. Susan being defiant at a seminary. Ian having to fight Ixta, hopefully not to the death after using his thumb to outwit him. The Doctor giving Ixta a cactus, thinking, not knowing about this fight, just that'll make his opponent become weak so he can try to get to the temple. And it's all just these intricately woven paths of storyline that really sort of just connects. So it's a pretty decent story, and the cliffhanger itself, where Tlatoxel challenges Barbara, "Oh, if you're a goddess, you can save them," by making the fight be one now to the death, which is something that I think might be a bit interesting overall to see, just because if the fight's a fight to the death, then Ian could easily die, and Ian's already pretty weak by this point. I mean, the fight at the end is done really well. The episode itself has, outside of a couple of shots that really, really don't do the episode any favors, the direction is excellent. John Crockett, he, at one point, at the very near the beginning, Ixta throws a spear at a board, and the camera follows him as he zooms in slowly as he picks up the spear, throws it, is ready to throw, catches back and releases, and then it cuts immediately to the board where it hits, which, there are little tricks like that which sort of make, I don't know, it just sort of makes the direction feel a bit more engaging overall, because direction can be a bit of a problem sometimes when it's just sitting a camera in the room and shooting. But this, John Crockett seems to have a good handle on how to direct Doctor Who. Susan's barely in this, which is a plus, because Susan's just sort of become a more annoying character. Really, there isn't much for me to enjoy about her. I mean, she may get a little bit to shine here and there, but there just really isn't much that's keeping me attracted to the character of Susan overall, as, you know, just as a general rule for a character. But really, this is Jacqueline Hill's episode to shine, and she is really doing a good job with the material she's given. She's trying her hardest to prove that, yes, she is divine, and she's deserving of this great honor. And, you know, she really has good intentions. She really wants to change history and try and allow the Aztecs to survive past Cortez's landing. And the episode isn't really afraid to show that, yeah, the Aztecs are kind of bad. They need to change, because they have some very, very barbaric practices that just don't mesh well with modern society. Yet they also have so much good in them. Like, you have this weird thing. I also have to give props to William Hartnell as the Doctor, because the Doctor, so the Aztecs have this garden where all the elderly live. I don't think I mentioned it yesterday. I probably should have. So the Doctor, he meets this woman, Kameka, who Hartnell, they're hinting at a romance, which is weird, and Hartnell does the romance really well, which, I mean, it's just sort of this fun thing, and you really, it's almost like you're setting it up to fail, but because you know that this romance, it isn't going to last very long. I mean, let's be honest, the Doctor's eventually going to fly off in the TARDIS and never see this woman ever again. But you're still feeling for this romance, hoping that it might just work out this one time. The Doctor might get a chance. Again, as I said, the fight choreography is really, really good in this one overall, because you have some really, really intricate fights, even with doing the right amount of cuts, even if they're severely limited cuts because of the technology of the time. It's still pretty good. That being said, because of a lot of the good that this episode really just sort of does to make the episode work well, plus just a little bit, besides a couple of really foibles, this episode is near perfect, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Because, you know, it is just really that quite good. Alright, so it is now it's the 17th of May, 2017, and I just finished watching The Bride of Sacrifice, which is the third episode of the Aztecs, and I have to say, even though a lot of third episodes of 4-part stories are gonna, drag on, just try to get to a conclusion, this one really does try to keep ramping up the action. It might really be because the first episode was a lot of really boring setup, and the second episode was a lot of the rising action. This one's meant to be the climax, and the next one's going to be the conclusion. But this episode really does a good job of making everything sort of feel like it's going to come together and make a generally decent story. It does have some pacing problems. There are a couple of scenes that definitely go on too long, and there are some things that are repeated, even though, we already kind of know that this has happened. Yeah, we just need to keep going to fill out the time. But other than that, it's still a pretty darn good example of how to do a good episode of Doctor Who. The Bride of Sacrifice itself refers to Susan, who is barely in this, but the big reveal is that she's going to be whipped because she didn't want to get married. She didn't want to get forced into an arranged marriage. Now, John Luke already used this theme of an arranged marriage in Marco Polo, so it seems like we're already kind of retreading ground just a little bit, which is kind of weird, because you'd think we would try to keep moving forward with new stuff and not just retread ground of stuff that we've already seen before, and things that really shouldn't matter too terribly much overall. I mean, we've already got the issues down, and that was only a couple of days. That was only 2 stories ago. So, it's just kind of weird to see that theme is back in the forefront after being just in the forefront again. But I think this one's doing something better. It's showing that the culture is actually going to beat Susan because she refuses to go along with it, which is interesting. William Hartnell, this one's even more comedic, as Kameka, the lady he's been flirting with. They propose, and now they're engaged, which I find hilarious. Like, Hartnell's reaction is just one of the best things ever. And you have, but it's really, again, it's Jaclyn Hill who steals the show here, as she plays the part of a goddess really, really well, and it's a really solid portrayal of, for Barbara. I mean, she even gives it to Toxel. Yeah, I'm a fake god, but you're not going to be able to do anything about that because I've convinced everyone else, which, just sort of gives this devious side, and she's trying her hardest to change everything, but I don't think she's going to be able to. I mean, she's not going to be able to stop the sacrifice. She's not going to be able to stop Susan from being beaten. And really, it's just we need to try to get into the tomb and get out of here. And that's what the cliffhanger really deals with, as it has Ian crawling into a tunnel, but water starts rushing into the tunnel, and the way out is closed, and this might lead to the tomb, so he might be able to find them a way to escape, but who knows this time around. It'll be interesting to see where this all goes, but it just, I have to say that the title, The Bride of Sacrifices, it's a really, really good title for this story, because each episode really has had a lot of good titles. Like, the next episode was The Day of Darkness, and it deals with the solar eclipse. It's just really overly dramatic titles that I can't help but just enjoy, because they're quite fun. That being said, overall I'm gonna have to give The Bride of Sacrifice a 9 out of 10, because it keeps up to the ramp pace of the last episode, but still has a couple of pacing problems that could have easily been fixed just with maybe a little bit of tightening here and there. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, it is the 18th of May, 2017, and I just finished watching The Day of Darkness, the final episode of the Aztecs, and I have to say that this is probably the first episode since all the way back since episode 2 of the Daleks that really, really deserves a full 10 out of 10. Yes, I'm giving the rating away now, because this episode, well, I probably won't talk about it very long, because it is quite late. It does do quite a lot right. It does nearly everything right, especially when it comes to the work of William Hartnell, who is on top game here, as he really, really doesn't want to leave Kameka, which is a pretty soft spot, but he definitely wants to get out of there, because he and the crew are going to be killed by the Aztecs, and it's just a very, very tense episode overall, with Barbara finally coming to terms with the fact that she can't rewrite history even as much as she really, really wants to, and Ian actually getting the chance to beat Ixtal once and for all by killing him. Yeah, Ixtal goes down, like, well, he gets thrown off a pyramid, so I'm pretty sure he's dead. Yet nothing about the consequences get changed except the thoughts and minds of, well, Oddlock, who is just one guy. But it's just that one guy that really hammers home how little you can actually do to change things in the grand scheme of things for the Aztecs, because it's it's just, these ideas are just ingrained in their culture. And they're not good ideas, which is really, really good. Jacqueline Hill has her finest moments here, and there's this moment at the very end where they're going into the TARDIS. The Doctor sets down. He sets down the a token Kamega gave him. Is going in and then realizes, oh, screw this! I have to take it, and it's a really good scene. And then you have the cliffhanger, which leads seamlessly to the next story, suggesting that we're in the TARDIS lands inside something that's moving, which is it's a great episode overall. The fight scene we've had the best fight scene in Doctor Who yet, and well, I just have to say it's probably gonna be the best this is probably overall, at least based on the scores, the best Doctor Who story yet. So really, what else can I give at part 4 of the Aztecs but that 10 out of 10? Right, so that 10 out of 10 being calculated for part 4, and then taking into account episode 1, the Temple of Evil getting a 7 out of 10, episode 2 and 3, the Warriors of Death and the Brightest Sacrifice respectively getting 9 out of 10s. The average score for the Aztecs is the highest Hartnell score yet of an 8.75 out of 10. Thanks for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, and comment, and join me next time when we go to the next Doctor Who story on television, which is the penultimate story in the televised season 1 in the marathon, what I'm going to be calling season 1A, with the Censorites.